This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stockbox interview.
Joining us today is Stefan Bernstein, the CEO of GreenRoc Strategic Materials. Thank you very much for joining us today, Stefan. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm glad to be here, Mark.
It was good to be speaking to you. We did speak to a research analyst last week, and it was the first introduction really to the company, which did interest me quite a lot, of course, graphite in Greenland. But of course, before we talk a little bit about what's going on the project level, there's some news being announced just this morning here, where you've covered the exploitation license and where that's at, but also various trips and discussions, partnership agreements you might be having in the next few weeks. But let's just talk about the exploitation license first then. So the government have confirmed that the application meets the submission requirements, and now it enters into a review of the MRE, and then it's a 35-day sort of consultation period. So are you sort of on track to get that granted, do you think, before the end of the year?
I don't think that it can be all concluded before the end of the year. It'll be first quarter 2025. But we have now been through that kind of compliance analysis that assesses our application, all the information we have submitted, whether it complies, of course, with the requirements.
Okay.
And so it's only really the technicalities, like the mineral resource estimate, that has to be like a third party approval before it can go on to the submission for the pre-consultation. Okay,
but that MRE, that's done effectively. That's just going through that consultation process.
It is. Now. Yeah. It is. Yes.
Okay, good. So
it's just like the government's own quality control. That's what it is, and it's already been through a third party qualified person, so it's fine. But it's just that extra piece of assessment they need to have in place.
Okay, and that's the last piece effectively, and then all being well, there shouldn't be any reason, in your opinion, as to why it wouldn't be granted sort of early part of next year.
Well, I mean, to be granted, it has to be passing through the pre-consultation. There will be an array of questions, worries, expectations, hopes, whatever comes from the various stakeholders. We'll then assemble those and answer them the best we can, send it all back to the government, and then they eventually will grant the exploitation license.
Okay. And can you anticipate, or to any kind of degree, what are the concerns maybe then? You could get ahead of the game, so you're ready to address them.
Yes, of course. We've had several information meetings and information tours to South Greenland, particularly South Greenland, where we are conducting our work. And what we have been met with is a lot of serious interest in our project. And because it's a relatively small mining project, it's also all underground, and it's essentially reopening a mine that has been closed for about 100 years. So people are kind of get used to being in a mining environment, and they see it as a great opportunity for them to bring some activities back to that part of Greenland. So we see a lot of interest, really.
And I mean, so a lot of interest, and from the sort of, let's say, the local community. You're seeing interest from the local community in Greenland, in terms of even down to the local residents, for example, expressing interest, maybe even wanting to have a piece of what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously, we'll try to source as much as we can of the workforce locally in Greenland. And those that don't have the necessary skills, we will certainly make sure that they can be upskilled so they can work for us. Okay. And our activities will, of course, spin off a lot of other business, and we'll purchase a lot of the groceries, fish from the fishermen, and people have to have some warm clothes, so they'll buy those in their local shops. It'll just be a lot of extra activities there.
Okay, good. Good. Well, it's good you're talking about this and thinking about these things already. Of course, this project is fairly well advanced, and just from talking to Dan, our research analyst, last week when he introduced me to the company, so it's the highest grade graphite deposit in the world, 23 million tons at 20.4% grading there, whereas the average is around 8%. The PEA giving an NPV of 179 million, a life of mine of 22 years, and expected revenues of $89.8 million per year. And of course, you're planning to actually produce the graphite flakes as well, not just mine, but actually produce the graphite flakes as well. So is as part of the advanced stage of this project here, is that what's making you or having an impact on you going to some of these events that you're coming up? I know you're going to the trade mission that's been organised by the UK Department of Trade there in Detroit. You're meeting with General Motors. So, I mean, we hear a lot about OEMs effectively wanting to basically partner directly with mining companies to secure supply chains. Is that sort of part of that idea?
It certainly is. And you're mentioning what our end product will be. So we're taking the graphite concentrate that we're producing in the mine in Greenland and turn it into active anode material, which is the essential component of all lithium-based batteries. Mm-hmm. And that is in really high demand. China sits on nearly 100% of the production of active anode material. So all the car producers today purchase, or battery producers purchase, their graphite active anode material in China. So obviously there's a huge demand for it. There's a really good market. So it is on that background also that we were invited over to visit and speak to General Motors in Detroit next week. And I should also add that we see across a lot of the OEMs now that there's increased interest in securing some of the raw materials for the manufacturing of the vehicles. So, and particularly General Motors have been very active in looking at the upstream also to their raw materials.
Okay, so what would you hope to get out of that visit next week, other than sort of say, hey, here we are, we've got graphite, please come and buy it? Would you like to ideally start some maybe early stage discussions of potential offtakes or interest from General Motors' direct interest point of view?
Well, obviously, the first thing is to be known and meet the right people from General Motors, overseeing the procurement of raw materials, speak to them about their needs, what the specifications are for the raw materials, the graphite active anode material that they demand, discuss with them how we could potentially partner and do business together. That's all the main part of why we were there.
Okay, good. And I mean, is it unforeseeable or unreasonable to expect that a company such as General Motors would take a direct interest in a project such as yours, whether it's by way of investing in the company or some kind of offtake agreement, advanced purchase agreement, perhaps funding the process, the production plant there for making the actual anode, as you said, the active anode component? I mean, is it unrealistic to expect that sort of involvement from an OEM?
I don't think you can say it can't be imagined that they will take such steps. I mean, it's pretty speculative at this point of time. As I said, it's mainly about being known, put ourselves in the position where they understand our business and know where we are, what we can produce and deliver. And there's a lot of focus now on securing supply chains. And we have seen other OEMs investing in the upstream before and are also currently doing so. So it's possible, but it's very early stage, I must underline.
No, but it's good to be having those conversations now, like you say, to get in nice and early and introduce yourself, let them know that you're there and this is what you've got in this early stage. You're also going to the Mineral Security Partnership in Greenland and also to the Raw Materials Week in Brussels. This is all happening before the end of the year. So again, what are the sort of purposes and objectives you'd like to achieve from going to these events?
Well, it's a bit similar. Put ourselves in a position where when the talk is about securing raw materials, particularly graphite, the first thing people will think of is GreenRoc. And we think that we already done a good deal to arrive at that stage. We are now an integral part of the Mineral Security Partnership companies projects. And that forum of countries, which includes United States, Canada, Japan, South Korea, Norway, UK, and the EU countries, amongst others, are pulling together a coordination of public and private investments to finance some of these projects. It's still fairly early stage. It's not so long ago it was inaugurated, but it's happening with quite a bit of speed now, because obviously these countries that I just mentioned realize how important it is to secure the raw materials in the future.
Indeed. Okay, and where are you at? Because I think you've submitted your application for the EU Critical Raw Materials Act there, which I think it potentially unlocks some grant funding, but really it also, I think, helps to drop some regulatory hurdles that perhaps would normally you'd have to go through. So that's been submitted from your point of view. How long are you expecting to wait until you start to hear the results of that latest round?
Yeah, right. So the call went out for strategic projects under the Critical Raw Materials Act back in May this year. We submitted our application before the first closing date, which was in August this year, and they expect to be able to announce the strategic projects by March 2025. And I think it's one of the real significant step forwards from the European Union to secure the raw materials that they announce these strategic projects. We can already see some effect of the initiatives of the CRMA, namely that they have announced these partnerships on raw materials with Greenland, with Norway. So essentially, we work when it comes to supply of strategic raw materials. Mm-hmm. We act as if we were within the EU, which opens a lot of doors, of course. There's no concrete funding yet in place, funding instruments, but they're being working on this now in Brussels.
Okay. I'm just thinking then on some of perhaps the roadmap just going forward here. So towards the end of the year, you've got, of course, these very important meetings that you're going to be having here. But of course, you're working on sort of submitting or any final things you need to do for the exploitation license to be granted, and then addressing those concerns, I guess, Q1 early next year. But what are some of the key other stage gates or milestones that you're looking at, perhaps for the next, let's say, 6 months to take us to the end of sort of Q1, beginning of Q2 next year?
Right. Well, some of the most important things for us now is to secure the capital that we need to accomplish some of the major points in the work program going forward. And we realize that these are larger chunks of capital that we need. For instance, we need to set up active anode pilot plant in Norway, where we have decided to set up our first active anode materials plant. Also, we need to work on discussions with offtakers, battery companies, OEMs, about what their needs are, and potentially land some kind of early agreements with them, memorandum of understandings or other things, so we can work along with them towards the end goal, which is, of course, setting up this supply stream from the mine in Greenland through a processing plant in Norway, potentially also in North America, to supply the much needed material. So it's all about putting us in a position where we can attract funding, either through joint ventures, through public financing, or a mix of both.
Okay, so attracting funding through different routes then. What do you think you need to do in order to attract that funding? The discussions obviously are a big part of it. Does Amerstock, the project, have to go through further study routes? Obviously, you've got your PEA done. Will the next big one be the DFS, and that's when you really start seeing some interest?
Yes, there's no doubt that the work that we have accomplished the past year or so, completing the PEA on the mine and the pre-feasibility study on the active anode materials plant, have put us in a completely different place in terms of being visible to the offtakers, potential offtakers, battery companies, and OEMs. that has made a really big change. So I'm also quite certain that further de-risking our project, particularly the exploitation license, receiving that is going to tick another very important box for the companies to see us as a future supplier of critical raw materials.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of getting started on the next round of studies, PFS, would you be looking to get that started throughout the course of next year?
Yes, the PFS for the Amitsoq mine will, after all plans, start in the fall next year, provided, of course, that we can conclude some of the work, the technical work that we need to lay the foundation for that. Okay.
And your pilot plant then in Norway, you want to get that going, I think, don't you, throughout the course of next year as well?
Yes, we'd like to set that up. It's not a huge plant. It's something that can, a big garage you can put it in, but it allows us to process graphite from Greenland into active anode material and do a variety of test work and also demonstrate to offtakers that it's of the quality that they need. Our early indications from that work demonstrates that it is so, but we need to set up proper plant, like full scale, not full capacity, but full scale to prove that further.
Okay. And presumably then that pilot plant, as well as showing to off-takers the quality that they can be happy is what they need for their supply, presumably it will also feed into the DFS as well.
Exactly, it will. What we need, we have accomplished the PFS for the active anode materials plant, but of course these data will be crucial for finally conducting the definitive feasibility studies down the road, leading to the final investment decision.
And in terms of doing the studies, etc., internally for the Amitsoq mine there, how are you looking sort of funding-wise? Of course, you've got the pilot plant as well, which probably will cost a fair bit of money there. So what are the plans here for financing these elements throughout the company, throughout the course of next year?
Yes, obviously some of this work is going to be fairly costly. And so that is what we're working really hard on now, to find alternative routes to finance that, ideally through undiluted funding, which is certainly possible through public funding, both in Norway and from the EU, maybe also from the UK. Supplement that, of course, with potential joint venture agreements and other measures.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Stefan Bernstein, the CEO of GreenRoc Strategic Materials.
Thank you, Mark.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.